If it isn't fun, it isn't worth doing. That's my philosophy of cooking. If you've tried even a few recipes in your Cuisinart, no matter what model or which accessories you might have, I'm sure you've had plenty of fun as you've served up delicious, exotic, and flavorful meals. So let me show you some of the quickest, most delicious recipes you've ever tasted, all of which you can breeze through thanks to your Cuisinart. Things you thought were too hard to make, like a deep dish apple pie or a chocolate mousse torte that will leave you astonished at your own abilities. Once you learn how easy and versatile your Cuisinart is, you'll be as confident as I am that it's a tiny amount of work for such a great amount of pleasure and fun. You'll be very happy to see how easy it is to serve your family Cajun chicken nuggets, spiced and breaded, then sautéed smoky and dark to satisfy the heartiest appetite. The coating you will use for the chicken uses cayenne pepper and paprika, as well as garlic, parsley, and thyme. Now then, put into the Cuisinart the white of an egg and all those seasonings, including some dry minced onion and a little salt. That one egg is enough to moisten this bread, 12 slices. Save what you don't use in the refrigerator for a whole week. Cut the bread into quarters and add half of it to the work bowl. It looks like you'll never crumb this much bread in one work bowl, but you can easily. As more room appears in the work bowl, add the rest of the bread. Scrape down the side of the work bowl if it needs it. Take out 1.5 cups of the breading. The rest can be refrigerated and used for coating and frying seafood, pork chops, vegetable slices, or even a firm, flavorful cheese. Put a dab of Dijon mustard into some water, mixing it with a fork. Cut some boneless breast of chicken and wet the pieces in the mustard and water. Then coat the chicken chunks in the crumbs using any method you like. Gently lay the coated chicken pieces into a preheated skillet and fry them in safflower oil. Give them a little breathing room as you fry them. As you cook them, they give off an inviting, peppery aroma. Let them drain on paper for a few seconds and serve them hot. This Cajun dish is all-American for that all-American family on the go. Salads are becoming more and more popular in my family, as I'm sure they are in yours. This layered salad is the simplest imaginable. It uses all your favorite garden vegetables. To make it, you can, of course, use the standard slicing disc that comes with the machine for all the vegetables. I prefer to use the wonderful array of optional slicing discs available for your Cuisinart food processor. It's just as easy to have a lovely layered salad with lots of different textures. Since you're going to turn the salad upside down, make the dressing first using the metal blade. Drop a clove of peeled garlic into the small feed tube and let it mince. Then add the oil, wine vinegar, basil, salt and pepper, and oregano. Easy. Blend it together only 5 seconds. Leave the dressing in the bottom of the bowl. Remove the metal blade and attach the thick disc if you have one. Fit the disc into the machine. Since the shaft has 2 flat sides to it, so does the inside of the disc stem. Back to the tomatoes, 2 of them, which I've already cored. When shopping, I always keep the size of the feed tube in mind and buy food that fits it. It saves the trouble of cutting it up when you don't have to. Set one of them in the large feed tube, cut side down, and tuck it as far to your left as it will go without squishing it. Then slide the sleeve top down as far as it will go and pressing down moderately on the pusher while pressing the pulse button, slice. Do that for both tomatoes and arrange them nicely around the bottom of the work bowl. Each of the vegetables gets arranged after you slice them, so they won't gather only on one side of the work bowl. Change over to the all-purpose slicing disc. Now take a cored green pepper and stand it on its cut side in the feed tube. This time, pressing not very hard on the pusher, slice it in the same way right on top of the tomatoes. Layer the peppers as you did the tomatoes. Now we'll start layering lettuce into the bowl. Select a nice big head of iceberg lettuce and cut it up into quarters. Then core the quarters. Now you have plenty of pieces to start slicing into your layered salad. You may use the extra thick slicing disc for slicing lettuce. Now remove the disc and arrange the lettuce around the bottom of the bowl and get ready to slice cucumber using the thin slicing disc. After a few times, disc changing becomes second nature, and they all go right into the dishwasher when you're through. This is half a cucumber, which I've scored with my special stripper. Push it way to the left as you've been doing and slice it. Then arrange the pieces. Don't let me lose you. This is very easy. Stand in some peeled red onions and slice them. Press down firmly on the pusher for onions. Arrange them. Remember, you may use the standard disc, which comes with the machine, for all the slicing in the salad, but the varied textures complement the vegetables this way. Now it's time for the radishes. This is the ultra-thin slicing disc. It's going to cut radishes into slices 1 millimeter thick. Just let the ultra-thin slicing disc go to work. And arrange them. Then finish slicing the lettuce. Change back to the extra thick slicing disc. No problem. When you're ready to serve it, and that might even be 6 hours later, just invert it. Then pull the center to the edges gently with a fork. Until you do invert the salad, the dressing will get really only on the tomatoes, and they can use a nice marinade. I couldn't possibly show you an all-American meal without letting you in on the easiest apple pie you could ever make. Did you ever see a Granny Smith apple? They're just tart enough to sink your teeth into and make a perfect pie. Peel and core about 7 of them and cut them right down the middle this way. Since this is a hearty deep dish recipe, have a 9-inch pie plate ready to go with lots of room for those apples. 15 minutes before baking, get your oven set at 450 degrees. To make the crust, take unbleached all-purpose flour, the exact amount is in your recipe book, and put it into the work bowl with some salt. Add unsalted butter and chilled vegetable shortening in pieces. Put on the cover and let the Cuisinart run for only about 5 seconds, just to blend the ingredients. Then pour in cold water while the machine is running. As for all pastry crusts, don't let the dough form a ball in the work bowl. That makes the pastry tough. Stop the machine just as the dough starts to bind together. Take out the metal blade and remove the dough, transferring it to a plastic bag. The dough is easier to work this way. It won't stick to your work table or to your hands. Press the dough out into a thick disc about 8 inches around. Take it out of the bag and cut it. Think about dividing it in half, then make one side a little bigger, about here. Put the smaller half back in the bag and put it in the refrigerator. Put the larger chunk on a floured board and shape it to a round. Roll it out to about 12 inches across. Roll the dough right over the rolling pin. That's the easiest way of unrolling it, right over the top of the pie plate. Gently press the dough into the bottom of the pan and trim the overhang to 1/4 inch. Press the dough together in case it happens to split. You don't have to wash the work bowl. Return to it and put in the spice, flour, and the sugar. Run the machine for a few seconds to blend it. Then carefully take out the metal blade. Don't empty the work bowl. The apples will fall right into the sugar mixture. Use the thick slicing disc this time. You can use the standard disc too, but these apples really deserve to be nice and thick and will stay that way even after baking. Set an apple into the feed tube and pressing moderately, slice. Do the same for all these apples. And when you're finished, you'll see just how perfectly they've been sliced, sitting on top of the spices and the sugar. You can now get the dough out of the refrigerator. You need the plastic bag one more time. Empty the work bowl into it and give it a few good shakes to coat the slices evenly. When you're done, arrange the apples on the plate. Be sure they take up room at the edges. Cut up 2 pats of unsalted butter and put little pieces of them all over the top. Now we're ready for the top crust. On a floured surface, reshape the smaller piece of dough into a circle and roll it about 10 inches across. Then very gently fold the dough over once, then twice, and with the point of the dough in the center of the apples, unfold it nice and gently. Trim around the edge, but leave 3/4 of an inch overhanging. Then, with floured fingers, fold under the overhang and press it to seal it tightly and make a pretty edging. Brush the top with heavy cream. Slash the top with the metal blade to vent the steam. Put this in the hot oven for 15 minutes. Reduce the heat to 425 degrees and let it bake another half hour or until the crust is golden brown. This recipe gives new meaning to the phrase, easy as pie. It's definitely all-American. Whenever I bake cookies, they just disappear. With the Cuisinart, homemade cookies are as easy to make as they are to enjoy. Once you see how to make these oatmeal raisin cookies 1, 2, 3, you'll be inspired to make your own family cookie recipes the same quick way. So let's start out by setting the oven to 350 degrees. And the next thing to do is to line up the ingredients, and the Cuisinart is going to do all of the work. When I make cookies, I like to lock this tab so the cover is easy to manage. So I said 1, 2, 3. This is step 1. Into the work bowl goes white sugar and brown sugar, unsalted butter and shortening, both still chilled from the fridge. No need to let them get to room temperature. 1 egg. And mix these ingredients up until they get fluffy. It takes about 30 seconds. This is step 2, pouring the water and vanilla through the feed tube. And then mix these ingredients together for about another 10 seconds until they get even fluffier. Remove the cover and then scrape down the sides of the work bowl so all this sweet stuff gets mixed into the cookies together. Now, step 3 is really clever. First, go in all these oats because you want them to get minced very fine. Next, the dry ingredients, the flour, baking powder, baking soda, and salt. They go in next because you want them to mix in completely. Next, the walnuts, because you want them to get coarsely chopped, not minced. And lastly, the raisins, because you want those to stay whole. Put on the cover and pulse about 4 times. Once again, take the spatula and scrape down the sides of the work bowl. And then pulse 2 to 3 more times. Don't overdo it because you want the cookies to stay tender. And that does it. And this little film of flour that's on the top of the dough, don't worry about that because as you spoon the dough onto the cookie sheet, it simply disappears. Spoon the cookie dough onto a greased cookie sheet, and you can see that I'm leaving enough space between them because they do spread out a bit. And bake them for 15 minutes until they're golden brown. 5 dozen cookies. Try it. It's the easiest baking you've ever done. It's hard to believe, but ice cream is getting even more popular than ever before. So I want to show you how to convert your Cuisinart food processor into an ice cream machine. We're going to make a luscious, rich-tasting ice cream that you can't find in any store. It's high in fruit and low in cream and combines 3 winning flavors: chocolate, banana, peanut butter ice cream. So let's start with the peanuts. Take unsalted peanuts and put them into the work bowl. Put on the cover, and here goes. We're going to chop the peanuts from very coarse to very smooth peanut butter. This is good peanut butter. You know exactly what's in it. 100% peanuts. I'm securing the metal blade in place with my finger, and I'm going to take out most of the peanut butter. That just about does it. Put the work bowl back on the base. Now for the bananas. The thing to do is to peel them and slice them into 1-inch pieces and freeze them single layer on a cookie sheet. And once frozen, you can bag them, and of course this is a great thing to do when they're on sale. Put these frozen banana pieces into the work bowl along with the sugar and the cocoa. Then pulse these ingredients once or twice just to chop up the bananas. Then run the machine continuously to make little bits of banana ice. So scrape down the sides of the work bowl. Make sure nothing's sticking. Add a very small portion of this pure peanut butter. Replace the cover. And then pour very chilled cream through the feed tube with the machine running. You can keep it frozen for up to a month and serve it with this wonderful hot chocolate sauce. The recipe's in your booklet. Or you can serve it immediately, right out of the work bowl. This Cuisinart cooking gives instant gratification. Pizza was a fad in my neighborhood for a few weeks. Everybody was making them. But it died out, mainly because everyone thought that it was fun, but it was just too much work. Well, you don't have to toss dough into the air, and you don't have to hand knead it, or slice all those toppings with a knife. Most of the work can be done right in your Cuisinart. You can have great looking, great tasting pizza like this in about 30 minutes, from the minute you think of it until the second you bite into it. Remember, a very hot oven for pizza, 450 degrees. Then, of course, you have to start out with a terrific dough for the crust. Put the stubby dough blade in the machine and fill the work bowl with a little salt, 7 cups of flour, and some oil. That'll make a lot of dough, but it takes just as long to knead up 7 cups as it does 3. So why not? Dough keeps well. Then in a 4-cup liquid measure, wake up some yeast with a little sugar and just enough warm water. Then stir it around to get those little guys moving. Let it stand until foamy. Then add the rest of the water to the same cup. General rule of thumb for bread making is 1/3 cup of water for each cup of flour. Now start up the machine and add the liquid slowly through the small feed tube, just fast enough for the flour to absorb it. It only takes 40 seconds to knead. I think it's a fascinating thing to watch. The dough should clean the side of the work bowl. Look at all this dough, uniform, moist, and elastic. Perfect. Use 1/3 of this dough for the pizza. Put the rest in a plastic bag with some room to rise and keep it in your refrigerator. Later on, you can make Italian flatbread or French loaves with it. If you have a pizza brick for your oven, fine. Otherwise, a nice black steel pizza pan or even a cookie sheet will do. The right surface for a pizza to sit on is a little oil to make it slippery. And if you have some, a little cornmeal to keep it slippery. We are approaching, as they say, the fun part. Now's when you roll out the dough onto a floured board, or simply pull it gently to the edges of a prepared baking pan. Or if you really feel like Sophia Loren, you can toss it in the air and let centrifugal force stretch it into a circle. I, friends, will take the coward's way out. If you find the dough's too elastic and keep springing back into the center of the pan, give it a few minutes, come back to it, and it'll work out fine. In fact, now's a good time to start getting the topping ready. I've got mozzarella cheese, Parmesan cheese, pepperoni, an onion, a tomato, and a green pepper, all of which can be prepared in a few seconds. With a trusty paring knife, you first have to get everything round to sit flat. It's really very logical. You only need to core the tomato, lop off the round ends of the peeled onion, make it stand up on its own, and take the lid off the pepper, like this. Then you clean out the seeds from the inside and you're set to go. I'm going to put the mozzarella into the freezer for a few minutes to firm it up a little. Then it'll shred well. The way to insert the handle is to line up the symbols on the disc, triangle to triangle and dot to dot. Then turn it clockwise and it'll lock. This symbol on the disc, which looks almost like the shape of the onion you've just cut, corresponds to the shape of the motor shaft. That way you know how it fits in exactly the first try. Even if you've never used your standard slicing disc before, the one which comes with your Cuisinart, you'll be almost ashamed at how easy it is to use. Set the onion flat side down in the feed tube, close the pusher sleeve over it, slice. That's all it takes. One onion sliced without a tear. Some people point out that the Cuisinart has one problem. It's all over too quickly. Here goes the tomato, cut side down. You don't have to push hard on it. Close the pusher sleeve over it, and with one hand on the pulse button and one on the pusher, slice. I hope you notice that when you take the lid off, it's designed to balance on its head perfectly on the counter. The disc, too, balances on top of it, so the counter stays a little cleaner. Same business with the pepper. Stand it cut side down. Now I know it looks fragile, all hollow, but zingo, you've never ever seen so many perfect pepper slices. Now for the cheeses. Get the mozzarella from the freezer and use a medium shredding disc. That's the one with all the holes in it, which comes with your processor. I don't know how much cheese you've grated by hand, but it never was this easy. And go easy on the pressure. Just pat the pusher. The last two ingredients, the pepperoni and the Parmesan, will chop up together. You don't have to cut up the pepperoni, but it's best to cut up the Parmesan into 1-inch pieces. Then let the metal blade do the rest. We pulse it, then give it the gun, and in a few seconds, it's minced. Spread your favorite pizza sauce on the dough. Your grocery store has good ones that are canned, or make the one in your recipe booklet. And now, like magic, we spread the onions. Then the mozzarella, then the Parmesan pepperoni mixture. The cheeses blend so well together. Deal out some tomato slices, crown it with green peppers, and sprinkle on basil, oregano, and some freshly ground black pepper. Bake it in a hot oven about 15 minutes until the crust is nice and brown. This truly is a sight to behold. I'll let it sit out for 5 minutes before the crew in there attacks it, unless I get to it first. This is a BYOA party. That means bring your own anchovies. Focaccia. No, that's not an Italian baseball player. It's a very tasty, very flat bread that's got a flavor as distinctive as its name. And making this delicious bread is as easy as it looks. First, preheat the oven to 450 degrees. Now we're ready to start to make the spicy topping. Peel 2 small onions and cut the ends off. Use the thin slicing disc. You would have a nerve-wracking time slicing onions this thin and uniform in any other way. Replace the pusher and with firm pressure slice using the pulse-off lever. Then we'll set the onions aside and reassemble the machine. With the metal blade in place. Now's when we start the processor and add all those Italian ingredients. First, we'll toss a peeled clove of garlic through the small feed tube and let it mince. Then add 6 tablespoons of good heavy olive oil so that there's no doubt about the flavor. Then the poppy seeds, black pepper, and red pepper flakes. process only 5 seconds. This topping is a good one, but you can add cheese or other herbs to make it spicy or mild. Oil up a baking sheet, a black steel one if you have it. And if you've got any cornmeal in your cupboard, sprinkle it on the baking sheet. Then we retrieve our faithful bread dough that we made before. You can keep it up to 4 days in the fridge. And be sure to flour your board, your hands, and your pin. Cut it in half and roll it in a free-form shape to fit the pan. Then you can give it a stretch with your hands. Prick it all over with a fork. Spread the onions on top and brush on the topping. Bake in our preheated oven for 15 minutes until golden. The aroma of bread baking will draw family or guests from all corners of the house. Want some? Strawberries are so sweet and flavorful, I can't resist them. Yet some people shy away from them because they're always served with something loaded with calories. Shortcake, chocolate, whipped cream, ice cream. Thanks to our fast friend here, strawberries can be enjoyed in a luscious light dessert, strawberry fluff. Take 1 pint of fresh strawberries or even frozen ones from the supermarket. Clean them and cut them in half if they're bigger than golf balls. If they're not frozen already, lay them out on a piece of wax paper on a baking sheet. Freeze them solid. Use them immediately or keep them frozen in a plastic bag for up to 6 months. Put the frozen berries into the Cuisinart with the metal blade in place. You don't even have to use strawberries. Your recipe booklet tells you of the many other fresh, frozen, or canned fruits that work well. Add a little sugar and the zest of half a lemon. Pulse a few times, then let it run until it's an icy powder. Stop and scrape down the work bowl if you see that it needs it. When it's all finely chopped, carefully take out the metal blade and replace it with the whisk attachment. The whisk adds so much volume to the mixture that as you process, the work bowl fills all the way up to the top of the beaters. Add the egg whites, lemon juice, and a little kirsch or other fruit liqueur if you like, and then start it up and let it run for 3 to 4 minutes, and before your eyes you'll see the humble little strawberry turn into an elegant creation fit to complement any meal. It tastes like every calorie you've ever wanted, but it has less than 50 calories for half a cup. You should serve this immediately, maybe in a lovely fluted glass or even in meringue shells. Now your imagination can take over. When you see how simple it is to make this Tex-Mex style coleslaw with the Cuisinart food processor, you'll think that you knew how to do it all along. The old-fashioned boiled dressing is good and tangy and very easy to make. It's really better than mayonnaise, which would add another 900 calories to this dish. I know you'll enjoy it. Bring some oil, vinegar, mustard, salt, and sugar to a boil and cook it a few minutes until the sugar has dissolved. With the metal blade in place, into the work bowl, you put some cornstarch and horseradish and water. Sounds interesting already. Turn the machine on, and with the machine running, pour in the boiling mixture. Let the motor run for about 10 seconds. Then pour it all back into the pan and cook it, stirring it often until it's nice and thick. The cornstarch takes care of that, and the Cuisinart makes sure it's always free of lumps. When it's ready, set the pan aside to cool while we take care of slicing our vegetables. Of course, the classic veggie for the coleslaw is the cabbage. There's nothing complicated about cabbage. There is a wonderfully smart way to cut it up, however, so that the Cuisinart won't waste a leaf of it. First, cut the stem side and the top. The remaining piece should be just about feed tube size. Then core it using a paring knife. If there is enough cabbage around the stem slice, core it too. Then it's easy to section the rest of the cabbage. Cut it like slices of a cake. Cut up a red cabbage in the same way. Now that the cabbage is set to go, you return to the work bowl. Before slicing up all that cabbage, set up the Tex-Mex flavor. Put in a half a cup of cilantro leaves and run the machine. Cut the stem off a serrano pepper and drop it through the small feed tube. When it's minced, we're ready for the cabbage. So carefully remove the metal blade and attach the slicing disc. You can use the shredding disc, which comes with your machine. It makes fine coleslaw. But for a professional-looking coleslaw, I suggest using the optional ultra-thin slicing disc, which shreds cabbage finer than you could ever think of doing with a knife. Assemble the pusher, insert the first cabbage wedge, and slice. Lift off the pusher, and in goes another wedge. Press the pulse off button and slice. Slice all the green cabbage wedges the same way. Then slice 2 wedges of red cabbage. Press down rather firmly on the pusher, but don't overdo it. What a delicious mix with lacy slices of red and green slaw. To finish it off, we'll shred a carrot using the medium shredding disc. Peel it and cut it so that it's just long enough to lie in the feed tube. Shred them lengthwise. And you'll see that your work bowl is filled with colors and textures that support the delicate taste. Toss the vegetables with the cool dressing and serve. But you can prepare this a day or two ahead of time. One taste and you'll know you've graduated out of the everyday category into something very special. Nothing is more satisfying, except maybe the chocolate mousse torte coming up, than a perfect chicken salad mixed in your own freshly made mayonnaise. Take 3 tablespoons of oil, add an egg, some lemon juice, mustard, vinegar, and a little salt. You, of course, get to control all of these ingredients. Mix all of this up for a whole minute. You want to get a nice emulsion going here. You can hear that as it happens. The mayonnaise starts to thicken and the sound gets floppy. When you hear that sound, start adding the rest of the oil, just a little thread at a time. When the mayonnaise is thickened, take all but a half cup of it out of the bowl. Take out the metal blade and insert the thick slicing disc. Then slice the celery stalks right into the mayonnaise. Add salt to taste and a little more lemon juice. Replace the metal blade. Now for the chicken. Take 2 boneless breasts of chicken out of the refrigerator, which you've cooked and skinned. Cut them in half this way, then into cubes. You could also use ham or turkey. Put them in the work bowl. And then add a handful or so of seedless red grapes. And believe me, half the magic lies in seeing these beautiful plump red grapes just barely cut into the salad. To do that, just give it 3 pulses. And no more. You want a kind of rough texture to this dish, so don't keep the motor running and running. Lovely cubes of chicken and grape pieces coated in mayonnaise. Store-bought simply can't compete with it. If you've never quite seen your way to bake from scratch, if you've closed your eyes to baking altogether, this carrot cake with cream cheese icing is an eye-opening way to try and succeed. It's done in 1 work bowl and really shows off the Cuisinart to be the little powerhouse it is. Carrots are the logical place to start. Here are 8 of them, peeled and trimmed in the Cuisinart way. That is, just big enough to fit into the large feed tube. Shred them lengthwise. I'm using the medium shredding disc for this and pushing down pretty firmly. Seems like an endless amount of carrots. But you can get through them in no time. You can set it out on wax paper if you don't feel like washing out a bowl. This is the zest of an orange taken from just the very outside of the rind with a vegetable peeler. Add some sugar to the work bowl. Run the motor for a minute using the metal blade to get the zest as fine as the sugar. You're almost home free with this, believe it or not. Add the oil, eggs, vanilla, and all those bits of carrot. Still using the metal blade, chop all of this until fluffy, about half a minute. Now all the rest of the ingredients go in. 2 kinds of flour, baking soda, baking powder, cinnamon, raisins, and how could it be carrot cake without the walnuts? Pulse this all together, just enough to fold it in 3 or 4 times. The cake will stay tender if you don't overprocess it. Pour the batter out into 2 greased 9-inch pans and bake in a preheated oven at 350 degrees for 35 minutes. The best way to test if it's done is the traditional way. Just plunge a toothpick all the way to the bottom and see if it's dry. While the layers of cake are cooling, you can make a superb icing in a jiffy. Combined softened cream cheese, butter, sugar, and vanilla in the Cuisinart. Turn the motor on and let it blend them all together. Scrape the work bowl down as necessary. In no time, you'll have a delicious topping for a cake that's lovely to look at. Everyone will remember it. So no matter what or when you're celebrating, the joy you put into cooking will absolutely radiate to your guests. The moment you've been waiting for, the chocolate mousse torte. And believe me, it's worth the wait. One reason why this mousse torte reaches such a frothy buoyant state is the whisk attachment available for your Cuisinart. The thin wire whisk turns very fast. You can whip egg whites into a meringue in about a minute. First, butter up an 8-inch springform pan all over the bottom and 1 inch up the sides. Then dust it with cocoa. This makes the mousse even more chocolatey. Then preheat the oven to 350 degrees. Then back to the whisk. Put the hub adapter on top of the motor shaft like this. The ring slips over the top and snaps, locking it. Then the whisk attachment fits right on top of it. Separate the eggs. All the whites go into the bowl. Be sure the bowl is very clean. A pinch of salt helps to stiffen the eggs. Let it mix for about a minute. After a minute, see what great-looking peaks of foam we've got, just stiff enough to fold into the chocolate mixture coming up. Scoop out these whites and set them aside. Now's the time to get the chocolate ready. Don't even bother wiping out the work bowl. Now put all these wonderful sweet things into it. Chocolate, sugar, and instant coffee. The chocolate then gets chopped up using the pulse lever 4 times. Then you can run it continuously. You can tell when the chocolate is ready. The sound changes. Hear it? And the chocolate has been chopped as fine as sugar. Now add boiling water. You'll never overheat chocolate and ruin the taste if you melt it this way. This doesn't take long. Stop once to scrape down the work bowl. There's really nothing much to wash up. The work bowl and the spatula. When the chocolate is melted, add the yolks and the vanilla and mix 15 seconds. When it's all ready, we gently spoon in the whites right into the melted chocolate. And then you do the simplest thing. You fold the whites by pulsing in twice. Again, we scrape down the sides of the work bowl. And pulse again 2, maybe 3 more times. That'll keep it light. Take the pan that we prepared before and put half the mixture into it. Even if you've got streaks of egg white peeking through, you need to fold them in only just that little bit. Spread it flat with the spatula and refrigerate the other half. Bake this in the oven for 18 minutes or so until it's firm and dark, as I've done. I've also turned the oven off and let the torte sit in it for 5 more minutes. Leave it out on a rack to cool for a little while. Spread the rest of the refrigerated mixture on top and chill until firm. Then whip some cream in your Cuisinart. Use chilled cream, sugar, and vanilla. With the metal blade, it only takes about half a minute. Don't let it run much longer than that. With a good big pastry bag, create whatever simple designs you like on the torte. It needs only one more detail, and that's a raspberry sauce, easily made with your Cuisinart Power Strainer accessory. Take some fresh raspberries or thaw out some frozen ones and process them through the Power Strainer. The paddles on the sides of the Power Strainer let you squeeze just about all the liquid from the berries. The result is a smooth sauce, beautiful and delicious. You probably won't find anything so elegant on anyone's table that is so ridiculously easy to make. A moist cake layer and a fudgy rich upper layer with whipped cream and a smooth sauce. What could be better? For those every now and thens when you feel like indulging yourself, there's nothing like a rich cheesecake to satisfy your cravings. This one is unbelievably easy and is done all in one bowl. Begin by buttering up a 10-inch springform as I've done. Then take a graham cracker and crumb it in a clean work bowl. That only takes a few seconds. When the cracker is finely crumbed, coat the buttered pan with it and be sure to wipe out the work bowl with a paper towel. You don't need to wash the work bowl for this recipe. Blend together the sour cream and some vanilla and sugar. This only takes a few seconds. Stop the machine and take the sour cream from the bowl. Set it aside for now. Add the rest of the sugar and both kinds of cheese, ricotta and cream cheese. Run the processor for 15 seconds. Add the eggs one at a time through the small feed tube. Along with the vanilla. Stop the machine and scrape down the sides of the work bowl. Then mix both of the cheeses for a minute. Then you're all set to pour it into your springform pan. Bake it on a baking sheet for about an hour. That'll be when it's almost, but not quite, set in the center. The sour cream mixture we set aside before now could be spread on the top. Then it goes back to the oven for another 15 minutes. Let it cool a little while on the rack. When it is cool, take off the sides of the pan and let it refrigerate overnight. Using the slicing disc, make a garnish of kiwi fruit, strawberries, and bananas. The pattern is up to you. It's almost guaranteed to look pretty on top of the cake. To give it a real professional look, brush on a mixture of apricot preserves diluted in a little hot water. It's a shimmering glaze you don't expect to find in cheesecakes made at home. When you taste how good it is, I hope you'll thank yourself for that little indulgence, just that one time when you decided it was possible to serve the very best easily. And most importantly, while you were doing it, you were having fun.